Well, hey, come on into
the
Rooted in Progress Dream Center. Shout out to Councilwoman Gwendolyn Henderson in the building. Look at JB in the back. JB, wave to the people, JB. Yeah. Hashtag hey JB. Working hard. He said he was working hard for the money, Terrance.
Yes, he is. Shout out to JB, because if it wasn't for JB, we wouldn't be here doing this right here.
Come on.
We're probably doing the old school way, sitting in a couch in the living room or the kitchen table with some cheap microphones. But we're here in the WFLA Now Stream Center.
Welcome in, everybody. Come on.
Yes.
I'm Deanne King, your host of Rooted in Progress. We're back with a good one today, Terrance.
Absolutely. Yeah. So glad to be back for episode 6. If I'm not
7?
mistaken, I've lost count.
7.
It's been so many, guys.
I think it's 7.
Listen, if you are tuning in for the first time today, check us out.
Yeah.
Please.
On Spotify. Come on.
Go for it.
You
Go
copying
for it.
me.
Go for it.
Come on. You owe me a
Let's go.
soda. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, WFLA.com, of course. And then we have our live stream on WFLA Now and on Facebook. I want to jump right into this conversation because it's something that I think it took over the news cycle. And honestly, took over the conversation worldwide. A lot of people were talking about Florida when Governor DeSantis made and was vocal about changing the way African-American history was taught in schools, in public schools on a collegiate level. The changes to DEI on a collegiate level. It was a conversation that really, really sparked a lot of interest from a lot of people. Yeah. So we got a heavy hitter in the building today to talk about this. She is a longtime educator, a Tampa native, city councilwoman, an entrepreneur, owner of Black English Bookstore.
Yes.
Let's welcome in Councilwoman Gwendolyn Henderson. Thank you for joining us.
Oh my goodness, you like Shay with the running down the byline.
That was a good intro, wasn't it?
That was pretty good. I wasn't expecting it. It was really good. Thank you.
Man, I love you. The moment we met, it was nothing but energy and chemistry, and I felt like I literally was just at home. And with like a family member. And I love that about you because that resonates in every role that you have.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
You know, I tell my students, I say, it's there's no middle ground. Either you like me or you don't.
and I'm sure that carries on for all the people.
No. And I love that because a lot of them, you know, they start with, I don't like you and I want to schedule change. Yeah. And so I would never forget Velda Santiago, bless her heart, retired guidance counselor. She told one of my favorite students, Landy Mungia, she said, give it a few days. And if you don't like it, I'll change your schedule. So she ran into him a couple of weeks later and she asked him about it. He was like, that's my favorite teacher. No. And
guys,
in fact,
I'm gonna tell you, the shirt that she's wearing today, the yellow, it's just a ray of her personality.
Thank you.
My goodness, it's like when she sat down in this chair, that light, it's not the light that's coming from the studio here. It's just from her personality. It's that beam of light that she shares.
And I have some friends with me today. I have Shirley Chisholm and Kamala, so I'm bringing them along.
Yes.
And a little Olympic butt in here. It's the teacher in me. So
or the representation. Speaking of teaching, right? So we're talking about all of these changes that have happened as far as the curriculum goes, but I want to dive into you first.
Okay.
What got you into education? What made you want to be a teacher?
You know what? I am so glad you asked me that question because it's a really simple answer. My favorite teacher, Sandra Levins Cook, I still call her Miss Levins, even after all of this time. She's now my sorority sister, one of my top best friends. She was my business education teacher, sent me to ISS for tardies. And but I love the business education curriculum, and I ended up, majoring in that at Florida A&M University.
Come on, fam. Rattlers in the house.
So I just kind of followed suit. At first, it was kind of like, trying to figure out who I wanted to be as a first-generation college student. And finally, I landed on, what did you like in high school? And because I'm an educator, I have an opportunity now to share that with kids. Do what you love, and you don't have to get it right the first time. Doctor, lawyer, engineer, they have some very common goals, and that may not necessarily fit who they are and what they really want to do and accomplish. So, I end up being a teacher.
Wow. How long have you been in education now?
You know what? I turned in my retirement papers last week. August 1st will be 30 years. Yes.
Wow. congratulations.
Yeah, 30 years.
Have you announced that yet? Does everybody know you're retiring?
One article was written in Business Insider that came out the other day, but publicly, this is me saying it out loud.
We got breaking news
Boom,
here.
boom, bow, bow, bow.
Yeah,
wow.
And you know what's funny? They said I walked into the ISC building, and they were like, "Why are you here?" Like a little attitude. I said, "I'm here to retire."
Period. Period.
So it's been an interesting journey. I haven't gotten emotional about it.
Yeah.
You know, starting with drops, see how long that lasts. Maybe a few months. I don't know. We'll see.
So 30 years,
Yeah.
you've clearly seen a lot of changes to
Absolutely.
curriculum, students, to teaching styles, all of that. I'm going to just flat out ask, what was your initial reaction when our governor came out with initiating all of these changes to how Black history is taught in the classroom?
You know, that is interesting because let me start with this. Governor DeSantis is not inside the classroom. So that is for sure. He does not reflect in any way in a lot of teachers' classrooms. And I can say that even about administrators. So the direct connection to students is the teacher and how they present themselves when it comes to any type of curriculum. So we do have what we call Florida standards that you have to meet in terms of teaching students things. So when I initially heard it, it just did not bother me. It was the Moms of Liberty that really bothered me because they were the ones that were going to school board meetings and reading passages from books. And then the elimination of books is what really bothered me more so than anything else. And when you think about it from that perspective, really, that's just the library, but not necessarily the classroom.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, so.
And so did you have to make any changes personally? And
Not
how you
one
taught?
change. Yeah, I know. I increased the Blackness.
Oh. You increased you taught.
Let me just give you a little bit of example because, and not just me, being very intentional. So as a classroom teacher, you know, when you don't see yourselves even in the textbook and you're talking to children, especially at a school like Jefferson, which is a very heavily populated Black and brown school, any example that I would give would be a Black person. So as a business teacher, for me, if I'm talking about a CEO and what that means, yeah, that's what's going to be on the PowerPoint, a CEO. No, seriously.
I love that.
I was
It's
very
representation.
Exactly. And then because, and a lot of people still don't know this, that the Florida statute actually requires that we teach African studies, African American studies, the African diaspora in the curriculum. And a lot of educators don't know that, not just in Hillsborough County, but really across the state of Florida. It is the law. Shout out to James Hargret at the time when he was in Tallahassee. He started that legislation and it became a reality. So where you can really see it hurting is teachers not knowing that they have the power to teach it across curriculum. And if they do know about it, are they doing it?
Right. That law that Councilwoman Henderson is talking about, it comes from the Commissioner of Education's African American History Task Force, and it was created in 1994. So I'm going to read off the two things that are included in that statute. It says members of the instructional staff of the public schools subject to the rules of the State Board of Education and the District School Board shall teach efficiently and faithfully using the books and materials required that meet the highest standards for professionalism and historical accuracy following the prescribed courses of study and employed approved methods of instruction. The following: the history of African Americans, including the history of African peoples before the political conflicts that led to the development of slavery, the passage to America, the enslavement experience, abolition, and the history and contributions of Americans and the African diaspora to society.
See?
And
all of that.
All of that. And I read an article on CNN that said one of the presidents of this task force and an essential member of the task force, they found that only 11 of Florida's 67 school districts meet that benchmark set by the African American History Task Force.
Right. And what they did was they started giving exemplary status to the school districts that were doing it. And of course, Hillsborough County was not on that list.
Wow.
A few years back. So they made a concerted effort, I think, and I'm going to, go out on a stretch here and say I think they did it so that they could get the exemplary status.
Wow.
So you want the status, but are you really being serious about how it's presented? Maybe through social studies, yes, but across the curriculum, no. as a business educator, I have an opportunity sometimes, when I'm invited to train teachers. So I had a session during pre-planning, which is going to be happening soon in Hillsborough County. Pre-planning, I had a session on this very topic of incorporating African studies into the business curriculum. And so my session, I think 5 people came to my session.
Wow.
And it was on there for teachers to choose, but it really, for me, it should have been a mandatory requirement, because here it is, we don't do it. And at the supervisory level, and he still exists, by the way. So I hope he listens to this. So nevertheless, it still exists. Right. And so the leadership should have said, you know what, we need to require that every business teacher, we should have several sessions of this and try to get as many people in as possible. And then even have some professional development, maybe in the afternoons or online or whatever the case may be, so that, teachers can get this. So yeah, I had, the Black teachers come, a few Black teachers, and then, my girlfriends who happened to be white females, and they worked at, the same school with me. So they decided to support me. So even that was disappointing, because if the teachers don't know,
right,
then how can they teach the kids? Exactly. So when I said I'm very intentional, I had to be, but I'm reaching, my students. And that made it very obvious. And even one kid called me up and said, why are you always putting Black people on the screen? And I said, because if you're getting it somewhere else, let me know. Yeah. If somebody else in the building,
let me know.
They was like, oh, you got a good point there. I was like, yeah. So, me and Ivy Ship Washington. So, and maybe, maybe Roland Belizaire, the 2 social studies teachers in the department. But that was a really important part of me just being very intentional.
Right. And so you have your hat as an educator that you wear, but you also have this hat of city councilwoman. Is there anything that you can do in that role to maybe get this across the board and maybe somehow make some change?
Well, we don't really cross paths in terms of any type of resolutions or ordinances when it comes to city business as well as Hillsborough County Public Schools. But because I represent myself up on the dais as a teacher, a single mom, a business owner, a homeowner, I have a lot of different perspectives. So when people come before me, and you can roll the tape, just last week, I'll give you last week's example. A guy was talking about Channel Side and some improvements there. And, at the end, when everybody got finished talking, I was the last one with the mic, which my political strategist told me to do. Okay. And I pointed out that was called the Garrison District, where Black people lived.
Right.
So when you look at Waterside, I want y'all to know that was a Black community.
Wow. That's powerful.
So and if it was a Black community, that means that we were permitted, allowed to be in that space. And so when you look at it now in its vibrancy, it's very beautiful. And but it definitely doesn't belong to us.
Wow. Where's the markers? Where are the memorial markers? Where's the...
Oh my gosh!
Did I open up another show topic?
Yeah. Let's talk about history, even from a city standpoint. Right. Shout out to Robin Nye, who is a white female art director for the city of Tampa. During the pandemic, Robin Nye, a white woman, created the Soul Walk.
Yeah.
And so when you look at it, it's a beautiful, beautiful piece of work, recognizing the contributions of African Americans in our community, but that's what you're going to see. You're going to see historical marker. So some of the things that exist, when you talk about existing spaces, are churches.
Got it.
But this used to be here, this used to be here, this used to be here. Yeah, it's given in a historical marker. And so that is... one of the sad things about it is that's what we end up getting is a historical marker. There's one in Hyde Park for Dobyville, but you would have to look for it because it's so gentrified that you would have to physically, where is this marker? And you stand there and you read, this is where Dobyville existed. And that is sad.
Yeah.
So all of the historically Black spaces, it's very difficult in Tampa to identify them. Now, even Perry Harvey Park, when you look at that, when I drive down, and I have said this several times in several different spaces, when I drive down 7th Avenue, I love 7th Avenue, but that's what Central Avenue used to look like. Just vibrant, Black-owned businesses, and we don't have our own 7th Avenue.
Right.
And even if we did, we would share it because Black people get along with other people.
Of course, yeah.
And we would actually share our space with the others. And so the opportunity for history to be presented for me as a city councilwoman, really, I do provide that historical reference about anything, even if it's sidewalks.
Yeah.
You know,
during city council meetings.
During the city council meeting. And I'm not afraid to do that. That's what makes me an outlier.
Yeah.
And literally just something real simple. Ms. King, I got to share this with you. Even in my campaign, I talked about sidewalks because I did not know we were entitled to sidewalks. Carver City did not have them where I grew up until I came home from college.
Wow.
Now, we moved into Carver City when I was a baby, 1 year old. Okay. The summer job that my sister held with the city of Tampa, I was a custodian. She worked, and one of her assignments was to count the cracks on the sidewalks of Bayshore Boulevard.
For school or?
No, her summer job.
Her job.
Her summer job. Now, let's stick with this.
Okay.
So that was in the 80s.
Got it.
Her job was to count cracks in sidewalks. Now, think about it from this perspective. That means the sidewalk had to exist, right?
Correct.
Okay. So the aha moment for me was years later coming home and Carver City had sidewalks. And I'm like, oh my God. You know, I don't know who put Carver City in the budget.
Yeah.
But I look at that, and even looking at our recreation center, you know, in Carver City, the Loretta Ingram complex, which is beautiful. It took a long time to get things in black spaces in this city.
Yeah.
So you have to bring up the history to remind folks of, you know, where we're lacking. And we can't just do that with community redevelopment dollars. We have to be in the forefront of reminding people if somebody deserves to get it first, it's us. You know, so there's
powerful.
There's a big one coming up right now. The sanitation department is moving out of Carver City.
Okay.
The jail. So Carver City is a developed community. Carver City and Lincoln Garden. Shout out to Jefferson High School.
There you go.
But the sanitation department is there, and the jail system used to be there. Well, the jail system is now a beautiful apartment complex. So now we have an opportunity with this maybe 17, 20 acre land to do something with it now that the sanitation department is moving.
Okay.
And so one of my council members said, oh, we could sell that for $20 million, at least. No, now think about it. This is where the trash, this is where the trash people, the sanitation workers, dump trucks, all of that. Okay. So he said it would be worth $20 million. No. Carver City gonna get to decide what to do with that land.
Yeah.
And so you got to have someone like me on council, and I'm not bragging about being Gwen Henderson, but you have to, have to have someone up there. So we're not just gonna sell that for $20 million.
Carver City has to have a say in what they're going to do with that.
We're going to have a conversation with Carver City.
Right.
Because, see, now it's valuable. But when I grew up, it was the jail system and the trash. That's where you allowed black people to build homes.
Right.
So now it's valuable. You see what I'm saying? So another Tampa space that could easily be something amazing. And I think that we should have a say in that.
So you can have these conversations, obviously, with fellow council members, but how do we merge these conversations about making sure Black history is being taught in schools with Hillsborough County School District or the school board or with county commission? How do we merge these conversations to make sure these things are happening? And by things happening, I mean following the law.
Okay. So first you start with a really great superintendent, which we have. Shout out to Van Ayers. He was my principal at Jefferson High School.
Oh, wow.
And remember when they voted to shut down, Just?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so do you remember when the announcement was made to rebuild Just?
Correct.
That was a decision that he had to make. And he had to probably face some people that were very upset about that. I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
Not shout out to our private conversation about it, but I'm sure that he did. Mm-hmm. And so for him to have to make a decision like that to rebuild Just, it has to be very intentional.
Right.
And so that means he's giving something back to the community. At the same time, when it comes to history, he has to look at the policies, of course, that's in place for us, and then make decisions and communicate with the teachers and through principals and administrators, what have you, and resource teachers and trainers as to, what we're going to pay attention to and what we're not going to pay attention to and what is reasonable. Mm-hmm. So it's never been said, you all cannot teach Black history. Now, here's the interesting part that makes this very challenging. When you've been an educator for a long time, you have friends, right?
Yeah.
So I had a principal tell me this. Last like 2024 Black History Month, a beautiful program, Black History program, was at his school, and he was so excited about it. We happened to have a conversation about it, but a note was stuck in his mailbox. Did you clear this with Ron DeSantis?
Oh.
Now, that came from a coward in his school.
Okay.
Because he's an ally. But that's where the problem is. It's also about who you put in front of your kids.
Yeah.
And that is the scary part. And that was an aha moment for me. He wasn't just sharing something with me that was, annoying, and that he knew would piss me off and be so sad, that somebody, doesn't want to celebrate Black History Month. But the problem is that there are silent haters who appreciate what Ron DeSantis has done in trying to destruct the education of African American studies inside the classroom.
Yeah.
And so then you don't know how to identify these people because they're not going to reveal themselves, but that also means that they're not going to teach our children things that they should know. They're not going to follow that mandate that says you should be incorporating this.
So is there a way to incorporate something that makes sure in our local schools and throughout our school districts?
For me, it starts with the hiring process. For
Okay.
me, it starts with that. So that's why I shared that information. For me, it would start with the hiring process. We have to be just a lot bolder in our politics and how we run campaigns, as well as bolder in how we approach, the philosophies of educators who are going to be sitting in front of our kids. And that's very important. That's why there's a large number, if you do your research. I discovered this just through my bookstore, but there are a lot of Black moms and dads keeping their kids at home and teaching their children from home. There are melanated, educated groups. So you can't stop them from teaching Black history because they are the educators of their children, which,
correct,
by the way, parents should be the first teacher anyway.
Yeah. Yes. It starts at home.
Oh, yeah. During the pandemic, y'all was missing us a little bit.
I know that's right. But speaking of your bookstore, I feel like, you've created a space, and I remember us talking when I did my initial interview with you about opening your bookstore where there are no banned books, and banned books, that becomes a part of this conversation as relates to removing the teaching of Black history, because then you ban all these books that teach Black history. And so what's left for the kids?
Yeah,
what's left for the students?
I intentionally don't use the word banned. As a Black woman, it's not necessary for me to take away something. I say liberated, emancipated, free. The General Order Number 3 that was signed in 1865. Y'all remember that? It wasn't just the freedom of our bodies being released from being enslaved. That means that you are actually free to read, free to learn. Yeah. And so knowing that my great-great-grandfather, Sam Hightower, could not read and write on the 1930 census, which is heartbreaking to see, just rolls and rolls of Black people living in the 1930s, 50 years, 45 years after they were emancipated, our ancestors were emancipated, means that there's a lot of work to do. So a bookstore, especially a Black-owned bookstore, it's not necessary to call a book banned, but it is necessary for me to continue to provide positive as well as historical references inside of a space like Black English Bookstore. I had to be very intentional. So there's some hard, there's a row. There's several spaces within the store where there's hard things to read. Yeah. But what I did for young people and for parents, Black and white, and anyone who comes into the store is called it's a section of the stuff that society would call banned, and it's young readers' version of Caste and Ibram Kendi's book, Ibram X Kendi and Kendi's books. How to Be an Anti-Racist, young readers version, or The Sum of Us by Heather McGhee, the young readers version. And so the one thing that a lot of people don't know, including Governor DeSantis, is that children can digest things. I believe in kids, and they can handle things a lot better than what adults think they can. And also and a lot of people already know this, especially teachers. They know a lot more than what y'all think they know anyway. So some real. Some truth in history is not going to break them. Yeah. And I will say this, even to you, even in this space, history is, sometimes it's hard, sometimes it hurts, and there's also a lot of joy. And so, I can understand why it can make parents uncomfortable, but everything in society, it's not built to be fluffy and lovely and beautiful and happy and joyous. our kids have to know about the hard things too.
Absolutely.
It was very difficult for me to hear my mother say that she picked cotton. It was difficult for me to hear that. And I also understand why it was difficult for her to talk about it, because at harvest time, the sharecropper would tell her family that they didn't make any money. And that simply was not true by the way that they were living. The family was living, but the way her family was living, you know, they were struggling to eat. So here it is. We're not far removed from truth.
Yeah.
You know, in historical references. So it's important, even though it hurts and it may be painful, I believe that our kids can handle it, and I believe they can make better decisions about where we go as a society when they know the truth.
Well, my question is, how is it that you have books such as To Kill a Mockingbird is still being taught in today's school? I have a 16-year-old, my youngest, 20-year-old daughter as well. And I had an issue with their middle school as to why are they still teaching and reading these books when you have a plethora of books at your bookstore. You said you didn't like to use the word banned, but unfortunately, if you Google banned books, you'll see there's many states out there that has over 50 books banned, and majority of them are Black author books.
Yes, that's the Moms of Liberty. One of the books that's banned, just I Love My Hair, is banned.
Really?
Did you hear me? Now, they hair is our hair.
Right.
Something as simple as that. Yeah. Because if it makes their children uncomfortable, they will go after something that's positive for us. So to answer your question is that this is the answer. Terrance, I can't wait to give it to you.
Go.
I think that we just don't fight like other people fight.
Exactly.
We don't vote like other people vote either sometimes.
Let me get applause on that.
Yeah, you can stop right there.
Woo! Councilwoman Henderson, my goodness, I got to move in my seat.
And it's for a variety. Did you give me like some clapback?
I did. I did a round of applause.
Oh my God.
We got sound effects in the building.
No, we also have
but that is part of it too, is that and there's a lot of reasons behind that. Maybe our parents have 2 or 3 jobs. Maybe they're tired. They don't know what's going on. They may be invited to the meeting, but they actually rely on administrators and school board members to make good, solid decisions about things like this. Because they don't have the time or the capacity to do it, because they're trying to put food on the table. It's not, I don't want to, equate it to laziness, but being uninformed is definitely part of it, as well as the time factor and the energy, because they may not have been good students.
Right.
Or they are relying on other people to do their jobs.
So I think for all of our listeners, what I want to get across here is, obviously we're talking about the progression. How do we make a better classroom for our students that's encompassing and where they can learn Black history, which again is state law. Yeah. Right. Learning Black history. I think you've said a couple of things that are takeaways, right? It has to start with the hiring, right? And then it also has to be on our teachers to actually know this has to be a part of their curriculum. So my question to you, Councilwoman Henderson, as a leader in this community, how do we make sure that happens?
Yeah. Well, it's having those conversations with the school board members who are running for office. And y'all, some of y'all got y'all ballots last week. So you can remind them of the Florida statute. It starts there. And having conversations with principals and saying to them, hey, what is the directive that you have on this? Yeah. And so it's really important to start there. So that's in our schools. But within our own communities, the NAACP set up a free library of free books.
Wow.
Free books. And the majority of their books are what you would consider banned by society. But they are providing these books, to kids at no cost. And I believe it's set up over at Beulah Baptist Church on Cypress Avenue. And so you all can check out the hours and times. But those books are given to children for free. And it's also community organizations like the Skill Center that just opened recently. They're looking to put a book vending machine inside of a space where young people do come. It's about Omega Psi Fraternity Incorporated. They landed in town. Yes, they had a lot of fun, but they were here and it was a conclave with a purpose. They also purchased and gave out 11,000 books. Their goal was 8,400. And a lot of them they bought from me, which I greatly appreciated. They allowed me to curate books on behalf of kids. which they were very excited about. And it's also about our other organizations, the Divine Nine. We're members of the Divine Nine. You know, we have to continue to do the work, the nonpartisan work, and let our communities know that this is, you know, something that is important to us. Literacy is important. I really do wonder how many kids read this summer, because when our kids don't read, they fall behind.
Say it again.
When our kids don't read, they fall behind. And reading is power. It's not just knowledge, but it's power. It opens up the mind, the curiosity, the critical thinking. So we do have a lot of work to do. And honestly, it's just our responsibility as a community. Yeah. And you know, there's a lot of us that are what I call lettered, degreed. Yeah. There's a lot of us out here, and we're doing well. Yeah. By our own standards, by society standards, there's a lot of us that are thriving. And so even when people come before city council sometimes and, you know, they talk about the poor and the disenfranchised, that is true. But there's a lot of Black people in Tampa that's doing pretty well. And so that means that if we're doing well, we have an obligation and a responsibility to give back to our communities that do need us. And so it starts there. So it's in our communities. It's with our administrators, communicating the very law, the Florida statute, that they are allowed to do it, and making sure and asking, not just Black History Month and putting out your list and saying what y'all doing, some door decorating contest. Stop. No, it is 365. Yeah, it is 365. It is all the time. The 180 days that kids are in front of us. Yeah. How many times do you present? Like every teacher. My department didn't have this issue, but every teacher, every single day, how intentional are you being with incorporating the African studies into your curriculum? Because it's easy to do. It's not like you got to push something that's negative on them. It can actually be something positive.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely. There's a lot of positivity in
course.
African-American history as well. It's not all loom and doom.
Exactly.
It's not only slavery. Our story does not start nor end with slavery.
Correct.
And so I think, for one, I want to thank you for what you do in this community, because it starts with people like you, and it takes people like you to move the needle and to get these messages across. And my hope is that we're going to have you back on here, and it's going to be better news, and Hillsborough County is going to be included in these lists of school districts that actually meet this benchmark.
Yeah.
We're going to hope for it. Okay.
Yeah. You know, I what I love in this moment is the superintendent and I, have an opportunity to have each other's ear. Yeah. And so, which is a great thing. Right. Because
that's the partnerships.
That's the partnership. Right. And I'm able to say things. And I will give you a beautiful example that we can close with. Adam Middle School, K-8, grand opening was last week in South Tampa. Okay. So the building is stunning. It's beautiful. And so they are the aviators. I'm touring the school, and there's a beautiful picture of a woman standing by a helicopter. And it was an old dated picture, beautiful white woman. So I say to the principal and the superintendent, I said, we need a picture of Bessie Coleman in here. Y'all know who Bessie Coleman is. Okay,
absolutely.
See, Black people already know the history. Okay. And so he was like very in tune to me. And so I literally went in my phone and I showed him a picture of the first Black woman aviator.
Correct.
Yeah, her picture need to be up, and it needs to be up before school start.
And is it?
No, I told him this just last week.
Okay.
Because the decorations
are
done.
It for the next couple weeks.
The decorations are done.
All right.
And so I don't know who was the mom pop committee that decorated the school, but you have to be very intentional. So I said that to the superintendent and the principal. You know, and they were like, oh, and they were receiving that. I'm like, yes, I had to. And I really wanted to give them the visual of it. Yeah, here's Bessie Coleman. Yeah,
that's
in
progress.
her,
Let's go.
That's progress.
Yeah, and that's important. So we have a responsibility when we are in front of people who can make decisions to say it.
Right.
Come on.
Even in a community where a school where the population may end up being 5-6% Black folks, but that's not the point.
You still got to do it.
Every kid gets to see that Bessie Coleman was the first Black aviator.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we appreciate that. Everyone be intentional. Yes. After listening to this, be intentional and hold people accountable. That's how we're going to make progress as it relates to this topic. Yep. Councilwoman Henderson, thank you for joining us.
Much.
Yes. Well, say thank you to Kamala and to Shirley Chisholm, y'all.
They was here right here
They was with us. That's right.
All right.
We love having you here. We're going to have you back for another episode. This is something that I hope the folks at home and all of our listeners, again, you're listening and going to lead with intention from from here on out. Rooted in Progress, everybody. Make sure you add us, follow us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube. We're here every single Thursday. We ain't going nowhere.
Nowhere. We're here.
Every single Thursday at 11 a.m. You can also join us live on Facebook, the WFLA app, WFLAnow.com. Y'all go out there and be intentional. Thanks for joining us.
Stay rooted, people. Thank you.
Oh my God.